May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listener.
Here.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Mulvaney. Trustee Turner.
Here.
Trustee Vree. President Levin.
Okay. Thank you. The first order of business is our approval of the minutes of the March 21st, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting and the March 21st, 2019 Village Board regular meeting. Does anybody have any questions or things that they want to look at with respect to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Turner.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes.
And just for the purposes of the record, President Levin is voting tonight in order to constitute a quorum of the Board of Trustees.
We have a trustee who has a son with a medical problem, et cetera, so we're a little short today on our normal complement. All right, this is the time in our meeting when we would ask anyone who wishes to comment on a matter not on the agenda to come up and do so, and I would remind everybody that we keep those to 3 minutes and would ask you to state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name's George Sang, S-A-N-G for the record. I live at 1060 Edgebrook Lane in Glencoe, and I've lived there for a little in excess of 35 years, of which 31 and a half years we've had the quiet use and enjoyment of our house. The last 3.5 years, we have had road issues, specifically Dundee Road west of Forest Way. It's become rutted, potholed, unsightly. It's a major artery in and out of Glencoe, as you all know. Moreover, it's been patched, which is not a solution. And some of my neighbors are here tonight. Those of us that live on Edgebrook Lane, we might as well live behind a tollway. Our houses shake, the noise is ridiculous. So now for the last 3.5 years, I've contacted the village, I've learned quite a bit. I've contacted Senator Bliss, and I get the same answer. It's IDOT. It's IDOT. And I appreciate that. I understand there's a lot that goes into an annexation, and I don't even think I'm suggesting an annexation, although I would note that Dundee east of Forest Way was annexed some time ago. However, what I'd like to do is appeal to the board to consider a what-if or a contingency plan. IDOT is understaffed, underfunded. They have done nothing, and we're not scheduled this year. What if they don't do anything next year? So what I'd like to point out to the trustees is I would ask that you consider some type of contingency plan. What I mean by that, or why I say that, is that, and I may be incorrect, but my understanding is that the lovely landscape medians are maintained by Glencoe. They were put in by Glencoe, correct? And that, yet they were put in on an IDOT jurisdictional area. So then why not resurface from the entry of, I'm not talking Skokie Boulevard, but resurface both sides of Dundee from where the sign says welcome to Glencoe to right where it becomes Forest Way. That would solve those issues. And my concern is that IDOT may never do anything. And I think it behooves the board to consider a contingency plan in that event, because it's just not right that we be faced with the noise and the bumps, and it's a major artery. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And that's really why I'm here. I've been struggling with it, and I understand, again, those, the jurisdictional issues that you have, but in light of the fact that the medians were put up, and by the way, in fact, my neighbor pointed that out to me, once the medians were put up, which are lovely, it did constrict the paths in and out of Glencoe so that there's more traffic now going over a lesser space, which contributes to the road eroding even more quickly. Is there something that can be done? Are you considering it?
Let me make several suggestions and discuss it a little bit, make sure that we're all on the same page. for the last several years, we have spent a tremendous amount of time trying to get IDOT to do what we think they should be doing, which is to resurface this section there. And we thought they were going to do that last year, and they did not. They came in and did what I thought was a horrible job of patching. And so from the standpoint of the problem you're facing, you and we have absolutely no disagreement. We think it's disgraceful, terrible, and we want to do whatever we can to get it over with and to get it fixed properly for you. We've continued to work with them. We pressed very hard. At this point, we had them actually decide that we were being so difficult. They came out and inspected it with us, and they went through and explained why it didn't meet their standard for doing the repaving at this time, and agreed they would come out, and they should shortly, and if they don't, we will be very unhappy with them. We continue to press them. They continue to say they're going to come out and do better patches all along there. That doesn't solve the problem from our standpoint or your standpoint, but hopefully it would improve it. We're suffering from the fact that the good state of Illinois is in a real budget crisis. We have not had the state adopt a infrastructure and highway plan as part of the infrastructure plan for 12 years. So this is not a new fight. We've been having fights over these things for the past 12 years, and it has gotten progressively worse. The Northwest Municipal Conference, of which we're a part, has been putting great pressure, which is the entire northern Illinois, on the state, on our legislatures and the governor, that they must adopt a plan. So if they did adopt it, and they keep telling us they are, although right now they're in the magical area of talking about whether they do a 40-cent or a 60-cent increase and so on, and all that is being fought over with the legislature and discussed between the legislature and the governor. If they do a plan, it is much more likely that we will be able to persuade them to sometime between now and next summer have a plan to actually get it done right. Whether that's true or not, we won't know till we see what they do, what they talk about. But we will be following it closely, continuing to try and put pressure on and working to get them to that end. Stepping back from that a little bit, if you look at what would happen if we took over the section of road you're talking about, we're talking about to bring it up to snuff. What a road in Glencoe should be is about $1 million. If we actually did that, IDOT would do as they have done to other communities and decide they're not going to do it again, because that way you can ignore it and we'll end up doing it. That cost is very high. For us to take it over, which we've considered and thought about and will continue to consider and think about, we would have to work with IDOT, the county and everybody on it. We'd have to actually take it over, but we would only do that, just as the other sections which you mentioned, or Hofelder and that, if they in fact spent a couple $1 million to bring it up to our standards, so that when we take it over, we're not talking about starting out with a several $1 million bill and having to pass bond issues and everything just to cover that one section. But we would be talking about then putting it into our normal inventory. So we haven't decided not to do that. We are looking at that. We're looking at all alternatives, and we can't determine what's the best one until we see what's going to happen. So it does not make sense for us right now to be talking about taking on that obligation when we're trying to force the legislature, the governor, to pass a bill which would let them do it. What would be extremely helpful would be if you and your neighbors began to contact all of the representatives and senators that represent pieces of Glencoe and tell them how terrible this is and how they must do something to fund IDOT and get IDOT to do this, and ask them why it is they haven't been able to get IDOT to respond to what your village has been doing, because it's making your life miserable. Because that kind of help would help us work both with IDOT and with getting some sort of program to get this done, and with the governor.
Well, I have two questions, though. Would that be without specifying an individual? Does that go to the state senator?
Yes, your state senator, not the federal. That's a whole
No.
different issue.
I meant as opposed to a state rep.
Right. Your state reps and your state senator, so it's both. You are in a district in which there are 2 state reps that represent Glencoe. Robin Gable represents part of Glencoe. Bob Morgan, I'm sorry. Bob Morgan represents another part of Glencoe. He's one of the new reps. You should be contacting both because you should be talking about Glencoe and how they're your reps because you want both of them to be responding. Secondly, we have a state senator. We really have two that represent. Judy
It's Senator Morrison and Senator Fine.
and Senator Fine. And you should be contacting both of those and urging them, tell them that, you're working with the village and, telling them how terrible it is, but it's not our jurisdiction and they need to do something for you with IDOT because this is terrible and it should have been on their list much higher. IDOT over time responds to those things. It took us a long time. We got them to redo Forest Way. They were supposed to do this at the same time they did Forest Way and they didn't do it. It's not in our control. It's really their budgetary issue, and we're not the least bit unique in having these problems with IDOT. Everybody in Illinois is having them right now because of their lack of budget.
So really my question then is, short of an annexation, which doesn't seem like, well, it's a huge undertaking, and they would also have to have the funds to put the road in condition before you would take on that obligation. But the idea of some type of contingency plan, if you funded the medians, which is part of their jurisdiction, and I'm not looking for Dundee all the way to Skokie Boulevard, but if it continues, and who's to say it won't? I've been at this for 3.5 years. I think that all of Glencoe's citizenry deserves a contingency plan. This is a major artery. Now, personally, of course, I got the noise. But I mean, people in and out, it just shouldn't be.
Correct. We have a similar problem on Lake Cook and issues with that on the part where you come in and ostensibly to us in Highland Park and that. For the moment, it does not behoove us to talk about taking it over because of all the things that are pending and what it would cost to bring it up to snuff. So we're not in a position to negotiate that.
I was just suggesting a partial resurface, just like your medians, where you put money to maintain it. If you could,
it's still a lot of money.
Of course.
And we have right now, over the next 10 years, $50 million worth of new bonds that are going to have to come in just to maintain all of our water distribution system, our sanitary sewers, our storm sewers, and our roads. Obviously, depending on what happens here and when and what we do about this is something we will look at as things to develop. So there are lots of potential alternatives and things we might do, but for now, the rational thing to do is to try to put pressure on IDOT to get them to step up to the plate and make this right. Certainly, we've been fighting with them all this time. We agree 100% with you. We've done it, and we've had talks with the legislature about the need for the program that you're chiming in will be of real help to us in helping you get this done. And certainly, you will have a strong interest, so you're going to be asking us what we're doing as we go forward. And all I can really say is we've got all options open. We haven't ruled anything out. We look at all of these things. We continue to look at it. And based on what happens, we will react in a way and try and propose things to you and to our village that will help take care of this in one way or another over a period of time.
I got a feeling I'll be seeing you next year.
Yes, sir. Come on.
Why do you pick the taxpayer's responsibility for something that should be done? I simply can't understand this thing.
Why is it the taxpayer's responsibility?
George's neighbor.
Yes. And say your name, your first name and last name for the record and your address. just so we have-
1044 Cherry Tree Lane in Glencoe. I don't understand. I'm trying to understand is why is it the taxpayer's responsibility to fix a road? It should not be his responsibility. It should be fixed.
Well,
I'm so confused.
the easy thing to say is it's somebody's responsibility. If it were a road in Glencoe,
Yes?
we're the group whose responsibility it would be, and you're the taxpayers that would be paying us the money that it would take to do that.
Right.
This is not in Glencoe's jurisdiction, so we don't have jurisdiction over it. It has not been properly maintained. It would be very expensive to bring it up to the right level, and that's a whole different level of negotiation. Whose responsibility is it? It's the state of Illinois' responsibility.
Okay.
It's not the county. It isn't ours. This is a road that for a long distance, right now, they're closing Dundee Road and performing some of their responsibilities. They're probably only 20 years past due on the road. They should be doing it. This is just one of thousands of projects that affect this part of Illinois that they have spent the last 12 years not doing. That's why we're at an infrastructure crisis in the state of Illinois. As your board, we have participated and worked very hard over the last 12 years trying to get the state to step up. In case you hadn't noticed, the state doesn't step up to a lot. So this is a long-term headache for us because your pain is our pain. And the best we can do is try and figure out how do we get our state representatives, who have to recognize you vote for them, have to think about what that means and how much they care about how you feel, to put pressure on their government, i.e. the governor and IDOT, and they have to be willing to step up and figure out how are they going to fund it. The state of Illinois has had a budget that's been out of whack by like $30 billion on a regular basis, and they're broke. They right now, what the legislature is dreaming of is big increases in the gasoline tax, but that doesn't account for how do the electric cars that ride on the road cover part of it. And looking at big things like making marijuana available to everybody on the grounds, it's going to bring in billions of dollars, and nobody knows whether any of that makes sense at all. And they're talking about changing the income tax so we can all pay dramatically more income tax. And that's their idea of how to satisfy you and figure out where to get the money to do these roads. Whether any of that makes sense is not something that I'm in a position to judge. Frankly, a lot of it does not, and we've had long discussions. I'm on the legislative committee for the Northwest Municipal Conference, which is the 1,300,000 people around this area, and we spend a lot of time trying to talk to them about what common sense would do down in Springfield. But that's something that tends to go in one ear and out the other when you're talking to people down in Springfield.
Do you think it costs $1 million to fix this?
Yes. Because I know what it takes and how much they've neglected for the past 12 years, and we have excellent engineers that look at what it would take to bring this up to snuff, because if you don't do the proper road beds and all the things you need to do, just putting a little blacktop on top is going to work as well as what they've done. They've got to actually come through, and you got to take up the road surface and put a new surface. There's a lot that goes into it.
I don't think it's the whole area. I think it's just a certain section. Did you get bids on this? I don't think it's going to be the whole area from Whedon's Expressway all the way to Forceway.
If I could step in for just a second, I think there's a couple of things that are going on. Dave Mao, the Public Works Director, has been in contact with IDOT. He's the one that met with them out on site. We have received communication back from them that they are planning to do an extensive patch. What we are trying to ascertain is what exactly that means to them versus what it means to us. I think we are hopefully going to see an effort out there that is far superior to what we saw last year. I think everyone shook their heads and couldn't believe the quality of the work that was done when they patched those potholes about a year ago. My expectation, based on the letter that we've received from IDOT, and we're going to hold them to this letter, is that they are doing a partial depth patch, which I think is going to do what you're asking. If it is a full width of the drive lane, if it does encompass the entire area that we're talking about, hopefully the problems that you're all experiencing, which are no doubt profound, are going to go away. That doesn't stop the overall need, though, for that entire roadway from Skokie Boulevard to be addressed in whole. That is what we want to do as the ultimate response to this. I think in the short term, our hope and our expectation is that this patchwork that they are anticipating, or that they have conveyed to us that they are going to do in May, is going to be as they've called it, a partial depth patch, where they grind a portion of the asphalt surface and replace a portion of that asphalt surface, the full width of that roadway in that particular area, right by Mr. Sang's house. No doubt about it. That is probably the worst spot of that roadway, and that is an area that we pinpointed If you saw paint lines out there a couple of weeks back, that was our Public Works Department that had painted the really bad areas, really from the the south entrance of the Botanic Garden all the way to the corner of Forest Way and Dundee. We walked through all of those areas with them, pointed them out. As the village president indicated, their response was, they're not great, but they don't really meet our standards for full replacement yet. And that's what in this year, exactly.
And it started in May, right?
Correct. So that is what we are working toward. My expectation is that we're going to be talking to you some more, and that as we have a better sense, Mr. Sang, I know we have your contact information, as we have a better sense of what we're going to get back from IDOT, we can communicate with you and give you a sense of what that fix in the short term is going to look like versus what the long-term fix is going to look like.
And keep in mind, even a partial depth patch isn't the long-run solution to the issue that's going on. So there's a short run and a long run aspect of this. And you're contacting our representatives in Glencoe and our state senators will be helpful, because they need to get their arms around the fact that they're not doing the job here, and both look at the short run to try and make us be quiet, but also the long run so we don't go back at them, because a lot more needs to be done in the long term.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, our next order of business is to report on the various committees. Tonight we had a committee of the whole meeting, and we covered two key subjects in the committee of the whole. The first one was strictly an informational exchange of ideas and understanding, so that we would have a better understanding of what eventually will go into our process in terms of the thinking of the people who want to develop the Hoover estate. And the other one was a very important one, which had to do with the discussion of downtown wayfinding signage, which is part of the discussion of our original downtown plan that the Plan Commission had created. And I think those went very well, and staff understands what we need to see developed as to the downtown wayfinding signage. And the other matter will, of course, proceed eventually to go through our normal process for them to have considered what becomes of their development. That's what we did in the Committee of the Whole. With respect to the Finance Committee, Trustee Vree is not able to be here tonight because of a family medical matter, and so I would ask another member of his committee, Trustee Miller, if she could report on the financial matters for this month.
So we did not have our usual monthly meeting this morning, and this last month, I should say, March, was the first month of the fiscal year, and so we don't glean a lot from just one month. There was a slight decrease in property tax revenue, but that was more than counterbalanced by a decrease in personnel costs, so the general fund was pretty much on target for the month. The water fund revenue, in terms of revenue, is outperforming where we were for this month last year, although the expenditures are a little bit higher than they were this time last year, and that is just due to the timing of a large capital improvement at the water plant. As always, information on our finances can be found through the village's transparency portal, and we always encourage people to look at our materials. We were going to talk about the new reporting format for the 2020 Community Improvement Program. We obviously did not talk about it since we didn't meet, but the projects for this year that we would have talked about are all multi-year projects, so they've carried over from last year. They will carry over into the future. They include our new enterprise resource, what's the P?
Planning.
Planning, thank you. Software system, our water plant SCADA system, and storm sewer system improvements. We also have been discussing for the last month or so our search for an investment advisor. We've looked at 5 proposals, and one is going to be presented to the entire board tonight for consideration. So that is it.
You did such a good job on that. I'm going to ask you to let us know about the Plan Commission. Is there
the
anything
Plan
new
Commission.
there?
All right. Well, the Plan Commission met in March, and we, as we noted at our meeting last month, we had to say goodbye to Commissioner Tom Sheckelhoff and Chairman Karen Thomas. We will carry on, but we will miss those two. At the substance of the meeting, we specified one of the things that the Plan Commission does is appearance review for new improvements that could be new buildings or additions or just changes to existing buildings. We reviewed categories within the appearance review to determine which ones of them could be reviewed by staff without having to come to the commission, because that obviously saves time for the developers as well as for the commission, and which categories would still have to go to Plan Commission review. So examples of ones that are delegated to staff would be things like replacements for lighting or doors or windows, permits for outdoor seating, partitions, things like that that are more straightforward. But the Plan Commission retained the ability to review things like wayfinding signs, building additions, obviously, building heights, sighting on the lots, setbacks, the larger issues that affect the downtown area. So that is, we do, as far as I know, we have a meeting scheduled this month. I assume that it will be on the fourth Wednesday of the month. Our meetings are open to all, and all are welcome.
Thank you. As we noted that we lost Chairman Thomas of the Plan Commission, we lost Karen last month, we also lost Dale last month, so I would ask Stella Nanos to give us the report on the Golf Advisory Committee.
Thank you. We did have our meeting last night. Eva Levy is our new chairperson, so she ran our meeting for the first time since Dale left. We reviewed the financial statements for March.
She's actually your acting chairperson, because the board will decide tonight whether she is your chairperson.
Well, I hope she gets approved. March came through very well despite the weather. We came out ahead financially. We saved quite a bit of money in payroll due to the cold weather. We didn't have the full staff that we expected, so we did come out ahead. The golf course also came out pretty well. Through the winter, we had quite a bit of snow that insulated the turf, which is good for us through the winter, so there was no...
Including on Sunday.
Yeah, our second winter was not great, but the first one was okay. And the golf course looks in pretty good shape. And our permanent tee time program, which is our largest moneymaker on the weekends, is having the best year it's ever had, with 15% over budget for the year so far. So,
Fabulous.
thank you.
Thank you, Stella. All right, Trustee Mulvaney is not able to be here tonight, but we are lucky we have Hall Healy here, and I would ask Hall to give us a report on the activities of the Sustainability Task Force.
Thank you very much. It was 3 years ago this month that you kindly put us in business. You gave us our charter as the Sustainability Task Force. So I'd like to give you just a brief report on what we have done and what we'd like to suggest going forward. Again, all in brief. One of the first things we did was to do an inventory among major institutions in Glencoe about what was already sustainable. And the list is hundreds of items long. And it's a real inspiration to know the people were doing at that time, many things sustainable. And this is all in the context of being not only environmentally but financially sustainable, which was part of your charter to us. We've spent a lot of time and effort putting out social media and other more traditional media evidence of what we're doing sustainably. And I think there's been a lot of increased awareness across the board. We've participated in many public events, like the Grand Prix last year, the 150th, and to help people understand what we're doing and what it means to be sustainable. We've also worked with businesses, and over 30 businesses in Glencoe have signed up, filled out a form saying they're doing things that are sustainable, and in return, they're getting these stickers which go on their doors or windows to let patrons and people in general know who is sustainable. And hopefully the idea is that we as patrons will then thank the businesses for doing this and patronize them more. I'm also happy to say, thank you, Phil, that this sticker, which was designed by Megan, brilliant job, will be our vehicle sticker next year. So it'll get even more visibility as to what we're doing in this village. I'd say the biggest job we did last year was to have a study conducted by a nonprofit in Chicago about safe routes to schools and safe routes in general around the village. They came up with an incredibly detailed study and a list of recommendations on what can be done to make the crossings, the sidewalks, and the streets safer. One of those strips is along Dundee, so as a result of the recommendations, we sat down with the budget, and Adam, thank you, Adam, for the excellent staff work we're doing, to figure out what could be done this year, even though there wasn't any allocation in this year's budget, what could still be done to satisfy some of the recommendations that were made last year, at the end of last year. And there will be a number of them. So that's good news. We also instituted a Meatless Monday, and a couple of the ladies on the task force went around to restaurants and encouraged them to come up with an entree for Meatless Monday. And that's being done now, and so that is catching on. We've had some initial work on ravines in Glencoe among people along Longwood to take a look at their ravines. Most of the ravines in Glencoe are private property, and we have more ravines than any other suburb on the North Shore. So what we've asked people to do is take a look at the state of their ravine. And in many cases, there are huge issues with them. So what we're wanting to do is do a study of the state of those ravines, and then we will then ask them for funds to help fix those issues. But as we were doing that, the Lake County Stormwater Management District came along and said, we'd like to study all of your ravines, along with the ravines in Highland Park and other suburbs. So they're now doing that, and that will be used as fodder, if you will, for looking at what we do going forward. This is a resident-based initiative involving Longwood and in the future others, and I think it's very innovative. It's only being done, I think, in one other location in the country, so we're in the forefront. Going forward, I'd like to recommend that we continue our sustainability task force efforts, and that we maintain a 12-person group as we have now, which includes, by the way, 2 students from Central School. I think that's really a great innovation. They've come up just by the two of them by themselves with an idea to go out and monitor stormwater drains after major storm events, or at the end of the fall when all the leaves are falling. And with proper supervision and yellow or orange, safety vests to keep those things clean. You know that one of the major issues with storm drains is dog poop. 40% of people with dogs do not pick up after their dogs. I'm sorry to be so basic, but that is a huge issue when it comes to keeping the water clean as it goes into Lake Michigan that we end up then swimming. We're also going to look at a framework to guide our efforts. There are many different examples of that. One is LEAD, that the Writers Theater has initiated. We might want to do it without paying the huge cost of getting that plaque on the wall, but just using the guidelines that they provide, which are phenomenal and will give us real focus. I think the last thing I'd like to suggest is that what is the last thing I'd like to suggest? I want to thank you all for the efforts that you have made possible. I think a lot of our success has been due to the fact that we've been collaborative with the library, the park district, the school system, and of course the village. But going forward this year, we'd like to suggest that there be a common focus by all Glencoe institutions to have a similar set of goals. Not that we'd all respond to the goals in the same way, with the same items, the same tasks, but that we're all headed in the same direction. And we'll make that more clear as we go forward. Thank you for your support, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? I would like to thank you, Hall, for the outstanding job you've done for the past 2 years. And you made it, our decision was not only right, it was better than right, because we got the benefit of the terrific job you've done.
Thank you, Larry. Speaking of that, there will be a transition in leadership. I believe in young blood, new ideas, giving other people a chance. So we will have a recommendation for a new chair, which we'll present to you.
Yep. We will take that into account, and you and I will work on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hall.
All right. Trustee Listener, what new things are going on in the Sesquicentennial Planning Committee?
Okay, well, there's certainly lots to report. For starters, between our March meeting and this April meeting, Glencoe actually turned 150, so that happened on March 29. At our April 2nd Sesquicentennial Planning Committee meeting, we reviewed kind of the recent events, which had included the Writers Theater event, which was the I Love This Town, a musical salute to Glencoe. Fabulously successful and very, very well attended. It was really, really an outstanding program. Also on March 29th, there had been the flag raising and birthday party celebration for Glencoe that was also very well attended. And for the next month or so, we're looking at smaller events. Things such as the We Care for Our World Service Day in late April for District 35 students, a family scavenger hunt that's being hosted by the Women's Library Club in May, as well as a panel discussion on the great women of the North Shore, and that's going to take place in Writers Theater also in May. The Glencoe Historical Society is also planning to unveil their Sesquicentennial exhibit in the next month or so that will be definitely something to look at. And also the village is busy planning for the July 4th celebration along with the Glencoe Park District. Plans are underway for a subcommittee to help plan a very enhanced parade this year. We're looking for lots of local participation with more businesses, religious organizations, sports teams, schools groups, neighborhood groups, etc. Kind of do floats. We definitely would like to see some more participation this year in the parade. And the committee is also in the process of calling for names of people who help to identify Glencoe's longest standing residents. There's a project underway called Portraits of Lives Lived in Glencoe. And it's really going to be quite an outstanding photography exhibit. where these people are going to be photographed and then interviewed by GHS volunteers. And these portraits and bios will be published online, and they'll also be part of the Historical Society's sesquicentennial exhibit. For all the details about what is going on with this sesquicentennial this year, there is a website full of lots of information and a calendar of all of the events that are taking place through the year. And that website is www.glencoe150.org. So if you have any questions, it's really a great website with lots of information.
Thank you. Terrific. Trustee Turner, tell me, is there anything going on with the Historic Preservation Commission?
Unfortunately, due to Chairman Sheckelhoff moving out of town and the resignation of another commissioner, there was not a quorum to have a meeting this month. But I would encourage everyone to consider either participating as a commissioner or rounding up neighbours or other residents who might be interested to come and make themselves known.
And I think we will begin to move in the direction of fixing that all up tonight as we get a new chair to replace Tom.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. May I have the village manager's report, please?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. President. I've got a couple of, 3 items on the manager's report tonight. The first is an update on our strategic plan. As the board will recall, we presented to you a final strategic plan last April, which was approved then. And given that it's April again, we realize we have completed a full year of the plan. As you can see in the report that was provided to you, it starts on page 17 of our agenda packet. We've made some very good progress on the over 46 initiatives that were designated in the first year of the plan. Though I will say, admittedly, the depth and breadth of some of these efforts has been more significant than perhaps we had expected. This has resulted in a less than expected completion rate for some of those initiatives. That said, I remain very pleased that over 40% of our full-time workforce representing each of the village's departments has been involved in the execution of the strategic plan, either in a team lead or in a team member role. Many have never had responsibilities such as these before. We've also engaged staff on several high-profile initiatives, such as the implementation of our new ERP, as Trustee Miller mentioned before, as well as our budget, our CIP development, communications efforts, all in ways that we have not done before. This is in addition to a heavy workload of day-to-day operations and a number of unexpected projects, which have resulted in a very active and very engaged workforce. I think they would also call themselves very busy.
Thank you, workforce.
Tonight, and thank you, I have asked Megan Meyer to give us a brief overview of our progress in our 4 goal areas, and Megan's going to speak briefly on that, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Village Manager Corrali. Good evening. As you may recall, the strategic plan has a hierarchical structure, right? So at the top are the plan's 4 main goals that were designed to be very broad reaching in nature and kind of help answer the question of where do we want to be in 20 years. But to break down each goal into something more actionable, a set of initiatives was created below each goal, and then below each of those initiatives were a set of action items, which you could also describe as steps for staff to take and actually implement throughout the course of the strategic plan. And those action items had assignments for both initiation and completion. So in total, the plan includes 14 initiatives and 76 action items below those 4 new goals. And as you can see on the slides, and as per the strategic plan as adopted, about 46 or 2/3 of those action items were planned to be initiated in fiscal year 2019 or year 1 of the plan. And that's indicated in blue on the screen if you're having trouble seeing those numbers. With most of the other action items planned to be initiated in fiscal year 2020 or year 2 of the plan, which is indicated in green. We're looking at that left chart. Also, as per the strategic plan as adopted, approximately 1/3 of the action items were planned to be completed in 1 year, with about a fifth planned to be completed in year 2, and the remaining to be completed in year 3, or really to be implemented on an ongoing basis moving forward with no real end in sight. So before I explain our progress, I do want to explain that during the implementation process, Team Lean submitted project charters for either a single action item or a set of action items to which they had been assigned. And during that process, we actually did alter the timeframes. Some projects got pushed forward, were identified more as priorities based on teams and workloads, and then some action items got pushed back a little bit, again, to accommodate workloads. So again, this is varying slightly from what you're seeing here on this slide specifically. So, to summarize staff progress to date, what we did was we took each of the 76 action items and we assigned them a status, either of complete, which is pretty cut and dry, which is blue, as on track, which is green, behind is yellow, or upcoming, which is in purple, and upcoming means that it's planned for either later this fiscal year or for fiscal year, or I guess it would be stub year 2020. Is that right, Nikki? Yes, okay. And again, these statuses measure progress against the timeframes as agreed upon during implementation, not as agreed upon in the original plan, because if we did that, we'd really be setting ourselves up for failure. So anyway, overall, of the 46 original action, of the 46 original action items in the original plan, we did kick off 41 of those. Some of them don't align, some again got pushed forward, and some of them got pushed back. So now I'm going to take a moment to go through each of the 4 goals. And again, what you're seeing here is status is measured against those action items. So beginning with the governance goal, it was to evaluate and adapt Glencoe's governance structure and regulations to best meet the needs of the community now and into the future. Again, that is a very broad statement. So under that goal specifically are 4 initiatives and 18 action items. On the whole, the action items are moving forward with 1 complete, 7 on track, 2 behind, and 8 upcoming. Notably, as part of the governance goal, staff is developing materials to be presented to the village board at the May Committee of the Whole meeting related to the village's status as a non-home rule community, which is obviously taking up a significant part of staff time. Also, as part of this goal, staff has collaborated with the Village of Winnetka on developing a request for proposals for the development of a feasibility analysis into the long-term options for a combined water supply system, which is something we'll hear about later this evening. Again, took up a significant amount of time. Moving to the services and infrastructure goal. Again, this goal was to employ best practices to deliver high-quality services and maintain infrastructure in an environmentally and financially sustainable manner. This goal, you don't see it here, but has 4 initiatives and has 19 action items. And again, on the whole, the action items are moving forward with 2 complete, 9 on track, 1 behind, and 7 upcoming. It is because of this goal specifically that you're now receiving those bi-monthly key performance indicator reports from staff. And under this goal, the team is also moving forward fundraising and construction planning for the new Glencoe Golf Clubhouse, another big project on our docket. And then moving to the next slide, for our 3rd goal is economic development, and that was to create conditions to attract and retain businesses to support a thriving local economy with diverse retail, restaurant, and service options. This only has 2 initiatives with some subcategories underneath and 18 action items. Notably, of those 18 action items, 16 moved forward wholly or in part, which I think is a reflection of our commitment to implementing the downtown plan's recommendations, to support our downtown generally, which is thriving, and to increase sales tax where possible. Finally, the staffing goal, which is to attract, retain, and develop an innovative, high-performing, and diverse workforce. This is the goal where you would see quite a few of the action items have fallen behind. 1 is complete, 7 are on track, 9 are behind, and 4 is upcoming. If anything, this is where it is reflected most, that priorities switch throughout the year. I do want to make mention, though, that while this overall view of the staffing goal maybe looks a bit behind, there is 1 initiative specifically that relates to workforce planning and recruitment, and that is moving forward as planned, that 1 initiative. So, Village Manager Crowley, unless there are questions, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Megan. There's a couple of points that I'll make before I kind of conclude my portion of the report on this, and certainly then answer any questions that the board has. I think in the development of this strategic plan, we all walked into it with a sense of there's a lot of good work to be done, and a lot of time that's going to take to do that work. We have begun to look at calendars for the upcoming year and begun to lay out issues to be presented to the village board and committee of the whole. And it's interesting, we have more issues to present than we have committees of the whole meetings scheduled. And so as we look at this overall discussion, there are, to Megan's point, a lot of things that are in progress, a lot of work that has been accomplished, and it is a heavy lift for this work group. And I think it's best to indicate that we are evaluating the best means of moving forward through the next 2 years. The work that we anticipate completing is very critical to the village. I think the timing of that work is also very critical, because we want to make sure that we're doing this work well and that we are balancing workloads appropriately. If there was a point that I wanted to underscore, it's that the efforts that we're undertaking with the ERP are significant, and I think to some degree underestimated prior to actual commencement of the transition to our new Encode 10 product. We have weeks of staff time scheduled out through the next 6 months, where we have certain staff members who may be doing nothing else during the course of a week than working through implementation of the ERP. Certainly that is likely a conservative approach from a scheduling standpoint. As we work through it, it may be less intense, but we know it's a effort that we need to put our best foot forward on in order for it to be successful. As we balance those workloads out against a significant initiative that is really, I think, a key point, that once that effort is complete in the next several years, probably 2 to 3 years, we will be far better positioned for a number of our efforts that we're undertaking. So as we look at that and as we consider how to again balance those workloads, I am recommending that we take a beat, that the staff look at the overall timeline on the strategic plan and look at the potential for certain of these projects to perhaps be given additional time to be completed. This was a very aggressive schedule that was anticipated in the strategic plan, a 3-year timeline with 76 initiatives involving as many staff as we are. I've lost count on the number of meetings that I have been invited to that I haven't been able to go to because of other commitments overall, that our staff is working to implement this plan. But I think it's rational also for us to look at that and say, what is the appropriate amount of time that must be dedicated to the day-to-day operations, the other broad initiatives that are underway, so that we make sure that nothing suffers in the execution of a set of strategic initiatives. So we are in the process right now of looking at the overall timeline. I anticipate sharing an updated timeline with the board in May. I do not anticipate anything falling off of the list. I think everything that's on these sets of initiatives remains critically important, but I think it is incumbent upon me to make sure that we're balancing the workload appropriately so that nothing suffers in this overall process. So we will be working through that and sharing that with you. Of course, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have at this point, but this may be something that is an ongoing dialogue.
I'd thank the village staff for the extra effort that's gone into executing against this program. I am kind of curious though, despite the amount of work and effort to the those people who've been given new opportunities to learn new skills and you know, advance what would seem to me like career advancement? Has that been well received?
You know, I think at first it was, there was a little trepidation from some folks, you know, what is this? And that's somebody else's job usually. I've got my regular day-to-day things. We have worked through with them some, I think, right sizing of expectations. What do they need to do? How do they need to do it? I think the teams have really started to gel as they've worked together on trying to maintain a schedule and spread workloads out in areas where folks perhaps haven't had to stretch their skills. So as we think, you know, to use an example of we're doing a comprehensive review of the village's municipal code. Some of the folks that are on that team have never really had to crack the municipal code on a regular basis. You know, they may reference it from time to time. So there's a learning curve that goes along with, well, what is it that I have to be concerned about, and what are the factors that I should be considering? As they have gotten more comfortable in those discussions, I think they've gotten more comfortable in those roles. It is a heavy lift, I think, for our team to make sure that they are not leaving other work in a way that is damaging, or other parts of the organization that perhaps need support. So there's been an interesting balancing act that I think has been going on. But I'm really very proud, and I want to make sure to say this publicly, of the willingness of our team to really jump into uncharted territory. A strategic plan in a government environment is no different than a strategic plan in a private sector industry. They are critically important things, and they take up an immense amount of time. And in order to do them well, they cannot be put to the side and gotten back to when time allows. And so they compete with other things that we're doing. But the team has really, I think, seen this as a new opportunity to help shape the direction of the organization and of the community as a whole. And I'm really pleased with how people have stepped into those roles.
Thank you.
I would make several comments in terms of this, I think, that are important and that illustrate what a tremendous job the staff is doing. The first is that the timetables and the job that was assigned was done on the famous old principle that if you have all these complex things and you load them up and you aim for the edge of the universe, even if you fall short, you'll be amid all the stars. And so it is not the least bit surprising, once fully engaged, that the timeline and the division of what things should have priority and how to do it would shift in the course of this. Secondly, it was designed to get all of the staff engaged in this and become a part of it. And when you take something like this and you engage everybody and they become a part of it and take on responsibility for working on their part and so on, the outcome is tremendously improved because suddenly you have the buy-in and the full effort, and you have the team as a whole working together to accomplish things that are of immense importance to the residents on how the village functions going forward. And one of the pieces of it that's added to, okay, here's what we need to do to adjust to do it right, now that we see how it fits in, is the ERP, which is a fundamental piece to the whole transition of how we run all our operations, and a tremendous and major step. And so what they have done, the time and effort and the buy-in and the people being willing to put in the dedication and stuff to learn and stretch and have new skills, will allow us to do a lot more in terms of how we're reshaping the way that we do things to be more cost-effective and far more efficient than what we were before, and bringing us into the 21st century in a far different way than the systems we had, which couldn't possibly accommodate what we needed to do. So I think it is a tremendous compliment to all of the staff that they have put forth the level and nature of effort that they have, and that they have made these projects their own and are accomplishing things that we don't see in any other municipality in the state of Illinois and really in the country. So I'm very proud of all of them.
Okay, well, as I said, you'll see some more communication from us in May, and I think that will set us up well for the next several years. I wanted to also this evening take a minute because we have a bit of a unique agenda, or a number of items that are unique on a single agenda. We have a large number of contracts and agreements for goods and services that represent successful efforts in intergovernmental cooperation and specifically joint bidding. We don't often talk about this aspect of intergovernmental cooperation. However, these efforts are generally all designed to leverage the consolidated buying power and strength of shared efforts by a number of local governments that surround us. So in a few minutes, on the consent agenda, the board will consider awarding several contracts for a variety of commodities that the village uses to meet our daily service delivery needs. Through joint bidding, the board will consider the approval of $282,620 divided over 4 contracts ranging from concrete for sidewalks and curbs, asphalt for patching of our streets, street markings, and road salt. These contracts were bid through either the Lake County joint bidding effort or through the Municipal Partnering Initiative, which is a consortium of almost 20 communities that work together to aggregate projects, bid them, and award contracts that together have saved our municipalities millions of dollars collectively since 2010 when the MPI was created. While it's difficult to ascertain exactly what the village has saved by participating in these efforts, savings in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per year have been calculated across all MPI communities, which benefits each of our budgets and achieves excellent results for our residents. Elsewhere on the agenda, also on the consent agenda, the board will consider several small bylaw changes for the GIS Consortium, which is another intergovernmental effort that consists of a group of 33 communities, of which Glencoe is a founding member, that have partnered to standardize and develop geographic information systems databases that are shared across the consortium and used by our staff teams daily. The village has been a part of this effort for 2 decades and was at the forefront when we joined the newly created consortium in 1999. Finally, there's a contract for a joint water system analysis with the Village of Winnetka, which may yield tremendous opportunity for further partnerships with our neighbor to the south for future improvements to our respective water production and distribution systems. As I mentioned, that this is somewhat unique that all of these contracts are concentrated on this agenda. I'd point out that virtually every check register that the village board approves each month reflects payments for goods and services that the village purchases through joint bidding, intergovernmental agreements, and partnerships with neighboring governments. I believe it's important every so often to remind ourselves how much we rely on one another and how broadly our partnerships really reach. We do talk a bit about intergovernmental relationships with our Glencoe partners, with School District 35, with the Park District, with the library, and all of those are critically important. And I will say in my 5 communities that I have worked in my career, I've never been in a community that has as strong a relationship between their governments as we do here. But I did want to point out intergovernmental cooperation is more than just talking to those groups. It is working in teams like this. Our Public Works team really, I think, has taken the lead in a lot of these areas. The Municipal Partnering Initiative was really fostered by the Village of Glenview after the downturn in the economy, and so many of the projects have been Public Works focused. But there are other areas that we continue to work, obviously, through our contract with the Village of Glenview and dispatching services that impact public safety and a number of other areas. We really are, I think, taking some very proactive and positive steps to be part of the broader community. We don't look at Glencoe as a standalone 3.2 square miles. We rely upon our neighbors to help us, and they upon us. And so I did want to just point that out as I was looking at the agenda. It struck me this time, and I thought it was worth making mention. Last but not least, as we do every year, LRS, our waste hauler, will be offering a one-day spring cleanup service to provide to our community to dispose of items that are not generally included as part of garbage collection service. That day this year is going to move back to a Wednesday. Last year it was on a Saturday. However, this year it will be Wednesday, May 8th. That's for the entire community, and we're not breaking it apart as we had a few years back when our team was picking up garbage. As a reminder, we have a second cleanup day, and that falls in the fall. That will be Wednesday, October 8th. I think it's important to make mention of the fact that while this service is something that we're glad our community can take advantage of, there are a number of opportunities, and we've enhanced the information that's available about those opportunities to donate items to worthy causes rather than seeing them landfilled. There is a very extensive list that we borrowed. In this business, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. We borrowed from Go Green Wilmette a almost impossibly long list of donation opportunities and organizations that will take items so that, and they will come to your house and pick them up, and they will help you to get them out of your house in some cases, to make sure that we're diverting as much from landfills as possible. Obviously, reusing is the best form of recycling. Reducing is really the best form of recycling, but in this circumstance, I think reuse is an important reminder for all of us. So look for that information on the website. There is a link to that list. Thanks to Adam Hall for aggregating it all together. Again, May 8th is our annual spring cleanup day. With that, unless there are questions, I will be quiet for a little while.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Our
Thank
next
you.
order of business is consideration of a proclamation declaring April 26, 2019 as Arbor Day in the village of Glencoe. Any questions or thoughts? If not, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listner?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Turner?
Yes.
President Levin?
Yes. The next order of business is consideration of a proclamation declaring April 2019 as Fair Housing Month in the village of Glencoe. Any thoughts or questions? If not, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call.
Trustee Listner?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Turner?
Yes.
President Levin?
Yes. Next, let me briefly talk a little bit. We have talked about Karen and that and our loss of Dale, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we did to look for who would be appropriate to appoint to replace Trustee Thomas for the remainder of his term. Just as we did before, we went out and asked anybody interested to give us their names and to submit themselves for consideration. I also went through and discussed any suggestions or thoughts of people for me to interview and look at with all of our trustees. And I worked with all the leadership of the caucus to see if they had any thoughts or ideas and what they thought of the various candidates, etc. And so we've gone through an extensive process designed to get us to the place of making a recommendation. And based on all of that, we came to the conclusion that the person that we thought would be the very best person to replace Dale come this May, because what we're talking about is approving someone today effective to take office in May at our May Village Board meeting, May 16th, to be sworn in along with our newly elected trustees, our re-elected ones, Peter Mulvaney and John Vree, as well as our new trustee, Joe Hallwax. And so tonight, I would like to recommend somebody who I think is extremely outstanding, and while Dale is absolutely irreplaceable, will do a very terrific job of coming in and doing what needs to be done and helping lead our board. And that is Gary Rubin. Gary has been for a number of years now the president of the school board. He has extensive knowledge of all the things that go into serving on a board such as ours, plus tremendous respect from all those within the school system. I've worked with Gary in terms of my president's council and on many occasions, and I believe that he is a very outstanding resident and will be a tremendous addition to the board. In addition, Gary served at length as president of the school board on the Plan Commission, and Karen Thomas recommended Gary above all others, thought he was tremendous in that capacity and would do a tremendous job in seeking, as I sought out, input from many, many people. And I couldn't think of anybody who would be better qualified. In spite of the fact that Gary's a lawyer, I think he would be very qualified and would do a terrific job, and he's good with finance and all of those aspects of the things. So I would like to nominate and request, unless you have discussion, I'm happy to have any discussion, although I have sought everybody's thoughts out at various times when we were trying to find a candidate. I'm happy to hear any discussion on this, and if not, I would like to hear a motion to elect or to appoint Gary to replace Dale effective at our May 16th meeting, so he would be sworn in with the other trustees that are sworn in at that time.
Gary, do you have the biggest dogs in Glencoe?
Not in.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't let that.
My
sway
little
my
dog thinks he
idea.
has the biggest dogs in Glencoe.
Do you pick up after your dogs?
Good question.
All right. On that basis, I so move.
Second?
Thank you. I will ask for a roll call vote in a moment, but I do have to say that on my observations with all the tremendous things, it is really true that Gary's dogs take him for a walk on a regular occasion. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Turner.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes. Okay. Congratulations, Gary.
Congratulations. And welcome.
Okay. We have a number of other appointments that we need to consider tonight, the first of which is consideration of the appointment of Bruce Huvard as chairman of the Plan Commission. I can do these.
I think you can do them all together.
Any discussion? If not, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next is consideration of the appointment of Eva Levy as chairperson or chairman of the Golf Advisory Committee, as foretold by Stella Nanos. Any discussion? If not, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, all opposed? The next is consideration of the appointment of Peter Van Vechten as chairperson of the Historic Preservation Commission. Any discussion?
I'm thrilled that Peter has agreed to be nominated, and I commend the nomination.
Excellent. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all opposed? Being no nays, it carries. Then consideration of the reappointment of Eric Birkenstein and James Frankie to the Police Pension Fund Board. Any discussion? If not, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. And last is consideration of the reappointment of David Friedman to the Zoning Board of Appeals / Zoning Commission. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. The next order of business is the consent agenda. Is there anybody who wishes to take anything off for discussion or have any discussion of any of the items on the consent agenda? If not, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Turner.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes. Okay. In
President
term-
Levin, is this tiring having to vote too? I mean, we've never had to do this.
Well, and actually, in all my time as president, there's only been 2 occasions on which I've had to vote, which are the last 2 meetings, in which we didn't have a quorum unless I voted. So up till then.
I didn't realize it had happened before. I must not have been here.
That's right.
Okay.
You were the reason I was
I
voting.
thought you had that, okay.
Nope. And I'm glad she's back, because otherwise we wouldn't have a meeting tonight. So we love you and glad you're here. All righty, regular business. The next item of business is consideration of a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a professional services agreement with Strand Associates, Inc. of Madison, Wisconsin, for a combined water system feasibility study. This is the item that was referred to earlier by our dear village manager, by Phil. Any discussion or questions? David is here to tell us all about it. Okay, David.
Very, very briefly, Mr. President and members of the board. In 2018, the village managers and senior staff from the villages of Glencoe and Winnetka met to discuss the long-range water supply plans for the 2 utilities, including the concept and feasibility of a combined water supply system. Through that effort, a scope of service for the work was developed, and a proposal was sought out from Strand Associates of Madison, Wisconsin. Both villages have used Strand for projects on their respective water distribution systems and their water plants. And in addition to their extensive knowledge and experience with both distribution systems, they're in a unique position to cost-effectively perform the hydraulic modeling scenarios that will be used and required for this next level of feasibility analysis. Strand provided a proposal to provide the scope of services sought out for a fee of $69,910. And as mentioned earlier this evening, Winnetka is in partnership with the village on this effort and will be responsible for 50% of the cost of those services. Strand anticipates it will take approximately 12 months to complete the study. I would note as well that Winnetka is considering the same action tonight at their village meeting. The expected final report from Strand will be an initial high-level investigation into the feasibility and costs of a combined water treatment plant. While no formal agreement has been approved, both villages have expressed interest in continuing to examine the feasibility of this concept. So with that, staff would recommend the board consider a resolution authorizing the manager to execute a professional services agreement with Strand Associates for a combined water system feasibility study for a cost not to exceed $69,910, with the caveat that the village will serve as the lead agency in contracting with Strand, and Winnetka will reimburse the village for 50% of the cost of the services, resulting in a total expenditure for the village of $34,955. And with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions?
My only question is about the 50-50 split, given that they're larger in population and area.
That really doesn't really play into this type of study, the population. We're not diving down to the level of number of services. I mean, it's a fair question, but the framework of each system is so similar in nature that the tasks that are being asked of Strand, the modeling, the different scenarios are pretty evenly split, and then those that we're looking at joint scenarios, should be split. So I think that model works well for this type of study.
Does that answer your question, Barbara?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
May I have a roll call?
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Turner.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes. Is there any other business that anyone has that they'd like to raise before the board, not on the agenda? Okay, if not, I would like a motion to return into closed session to consider under Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1, performance and compensation of the village manager.
So moved.
Second?
May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Listener. Trustee Miller.
Yes.
Trustee Turner.
Yes.
President Levin.
Yes.